Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, and today we are once again going to go over Hurricane Dorian. So, this is way closer to the Georgia coast, South Carolina coast right now. It's looking way more intense than yesterday. You know, it's been getting its act a little bit together. Still at 105 miles an hour winds. We are expecting it to stay about the same for a little bit, or it could strengthen just a little bit, then it'll come back down. But right now, if you do enjoy this video, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. And I'm going to go ahead and get into it. So you can see right here, we do have our eye that is reforming. Today it kind of weakened, and then now it's reforming. We have something called an eye wall replacement. So you can see how we have these bubbly clouds around the eye. So that's an eye wall. So usually, well, eye walls are the worst part of the storm. So you can see how there's the eye walls around here, especially the eastern side. Right here is where we're seeing the biggest part of our eye wall strengthen right now. So right there is where most of the concerns are. The southern and western side are a little bit less, but you can see that's well offshore anyway. We're not really seeing the worst of the impacts. We are seeing quite a few impacts move into northern Florida, Georgia, and South Carolina. We do have some tropical storm force winds and gusts, and we also do have some rain falling right now. It's you know, we're starting to see some impacts. Georgia, you're under a tropical storm warning, and then I think that's pretty much all for Georgia and the storm surge warning. Then South Carolina through North Carolina, we have a storm surge warning and a hurricane warning. And then we have a lot of stuff moving inland in parts of North Carolina that I'll show you in a minute. But you can see right now the storm is looking a little bit better than yesterday. Still not expecting, you know, a lot of intensification, but we could see a little bit, but we're not expecting much at all, if any. So you can see right now we are expecting a landfall somewhere across North Carolina, if any landfall. The landfall has been looking a little bit more likely. It moved a little bit west, but nothing too far west that we're concerned about exactly where it's going, or like it moved a lot. It did not move a lot. You can see it'll get really close to landfall, or it will make landfall. That's pretty much where we're at. Pretty much we'll see the same impacts in the same spots of if you live in North Carolina. We'll see the same stuff around the same spots anyway, just a few miles away, just a few miles more east, but really there's nothing too much of a difference. But a landfall in coastal North Carolina is possible. There are some models that are getting really close to a northern South Carolina landfall. Right now it's not expected, but you can see how some do take it a little bit more inland, but not too inland. So really we have a really good idea of where it is going to go as it moves out into the ocean. So that's kind of what we're looking at right now. Now you can see right here we do have these wherever these shades are. This is I'm pretty sure this is where we are seeing the very end of our tropical storm wind extending. So that's where we're seeing some tropical storm winds right now, a little bit on the lower side of tropical storm winds. But you can see once we get into that yellow, into that orange, they get more intense. So right now we are in that green, not as intense, but you can see right off the coast of Jacksonville and parts of Florida and Georgia, we do have the little bit more intense tropical storm winds, a little bit of a higher end or something like that. So you can see across the Florida coast, I'm pretty sure if we were to look at the key right now, we do have a tropical storm warning in those purples. So you can see where we do have that tropical storm warning is along a lot of the central east coast of Florida, moving into parts of southern Georgia, pretty much moving into the whole Georgia coast. And you can see that is also extending in near Jacksonville, the Palm Coast, Daytona Beach, Port Orange. It's starting to move out of Daytona Beach, thankfully. Didn't see anything too terrible. We did see some impacts, but that's nothing too bad. Now, if we move into those pinks, you can see we do have these storm surge warnings. So, in these storm surge warnings, storm surge is when the ocean just really starts to come in and the water just starts to pile up on top of itself. So that's pretty much what a storm surge warning is, and that is what storm surge is. So we are expecting it to happen pretty soon if it's not already happening. You can see it keeps going as we move up into parts of North Carolina. We have the storm surge warning, and we also do even have a storm surge watch across parts of near Virginia Beach, Hampton, Norfolk. I am concerned about Norfolk because they're already going a little bit underwater in Norfolk, if people didn't know about that. That's just kind of how the city is. But we do also have a tropical storm watch in those areas. In this area, Chesapeake Bay is where we do have it. Also along parts of Northampton, Accomack, and of course Hampton, Norfolk, Portsmouth, Virginia Beach, and Newport News, areas like that. And if we were to keep going on into that red, you can see we do have these hurricane warnings. So in these hurricane warnings is where we should be seeing hurricane conditions very soon. So this hurricane is expected to move somewhere around here, and this is where it can make landfall. And we will see some hurricane impacts across South Carolina, the coast of South Carolina, coastal North Carolina, also coastal. That's pretty much where we're seeing it. Maybe even very southeast regions of Virginia, like near Virginia Beach, we could see some of those tropical storm impacts. But if this was to move a little bit more west, we'd see those hurricane impacts possibly. But we will definitely have to see. Now, if we were to look at the track right here, you can see how we do have it as a hurricane for a while now. It's not really going to change that much. And you can see how it's at 105, and then tomorrow it should be at 100. It says 100. We'll have to see. And you can see by the next day, by a day and a half from now, we have this at 36 hours near the South Carolina coast. So tomorrow will be a South Carolina impact day, and the impact starting to move into your North Carolina region. Now, as we do move into, if it was to click, okay, as we do move into your Friday, that's where we're seeing our impacts across parts of North Carolina, maybe even our Thursday night into Friday. So if you're anywhere across these warned areas, we are expecting that. Even parts of these regions, we are going to be seeing some impacts. Oh my gosh, mainly tropical storm force. I just said M a lot, and you can see this is kind of what we were seeing here in those. The blue, the green, and everything. So you can see how 74 is our highest, 58 is our highest, 39 is our highest. I'm pretty sure what that's saying, but just imagine we're seeing low tropical storm winds, higher tropical storm winds, and then hurricane winds in that orange. That's kind of what that meant, if y'all were still wondering. So that's kind of what that did mean. Now, if we're going to move into your flash flooding potential, you can see the threat for flash flooding is pretty good. Over the next 3 days especially, we do have a pretty high risk of flash flooding around your Wilmington, Myrtle Beach area, into your Murrells Inlet, Georgetown, across South Carolina. As we move into that red, we have a moderate risk. That's going to be across a lot of coastal North Carolina, mainly if you go north of Wilmington, a little bit east, we're seeing that. Also a little bit more inland from South Carolina, and also into parts of the northeastern Georgia coast near Hilton Head, stuff like that. Hilton Head is in South Carolina, but they're really close to Georgia. Now, as we move into your yellow, that's where we have a slight risk, so this is still possible. You can see that's inland that's definitely a little bit more inland in North Carolina into Virginia Beach, maybe in areas near Norfolk, but right now they look like they're around the green. But this has Virginia Beach in that yellow, and you can see around central, I wouldn't say central, but really close to central South Carolina, and you can see we do have that across a lot of the Georgia coast and the northern Florida coast. That's kind of where we're seeing that. And then our green is that marginal risk, not a huge risk, but wherever you are in that green risk, maybe near Raleigh, North Carolina, into inner parts of Georgia where you do have it. You know where you are if you are seeing this, but that's kind of what we're expecting. So let's say the pink and the red is where right now it looks the worst. And then the yellow is kind of where it is. It's a little iffy. We'll have to see. And then the green is we're not expecting significant impacts, but some. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and move on to the NAM 12KM model. But actually, before we do, I did want to show y'all something special real quick. Just something I did want to show y'all this. And this is where we'll be seeing this is where our maximum wind gusts we're expecting right now. So you can see across those greens, we have around 20 to 30 mile an hour wind gusts. And as we move more inland, really nothing to worry about. Now, if we were to keep moving around here into Raleigh, maybe 40 or 50 mile per hour wind gusts, into parts of central South Carolina, 40 to 50. As we go a little bit more inland around Georgia. Now, if we get to a little inland from the North Carolina coast, we see about 60 mile per hour wind gusts. So anywhere really right here, we should be seeing tropical storm conditions. We kind of just cut it off right there. Now remember, these are wind gusts, not sustained. So you won't be seeing this over a prolonged period. These will be just your spikes. Now you can see as we get a little bit more inland, a little bit more towards the ocean, we'd see around our 60 to 70, pushing those 70s. And as we get right on the coast of South Carolina and North Carolina, we could be seeing 90 or maybe 100 mile per hour wind gusts, especially in North Carolina and those most coastal areas. We will probably definitely see 100 to 105 wind gusts, or maybe a little bit more. So I just did just want to kind of show you this before I do go on. So here is the NAM model. Now, if we were to look at this right now, it looks like, this is what we're seeing. We do have that rain across parts of the South Carolina and Georgia coast, the northern Florida coast. And if we were to keep going, you see Fernand over there making landfall. It's about to make landfall if it already hasn't. I'm not sure. This is a little delayed, but it's about to make landfall if it already hasn't across Mexico and even parts of southern Texas. Very southern Texas are seeing rain impacts. But if we were to go back to Dorian, you can see how this has it getting really close to making landfall along the South Carolina coast. Now you can see all those rain impacts do move a little inland. So you can see how those rain impacts are pushing it. You can see right now we really don't have it that far inland, but you can see how it does start to push a little bit more inland. Those winds get a little worse, and then it kind of just rides the South Carolina coast. So it didn't make landfall. The eye has to touch land for it to make landfall. So even if you're seeing some of the worst of the impacts and the eye is off into the ocean, it's not a landfall. So a lot of people think if you just get impacts, it's a landfall. No, the eye has to be right over, or the center of the storm, if you want to say that too. So you can see how this does move up the South Carolina coast, bringing a lot of rain impacts. And you can see how this one does have it making landfall. So this is the NAM 12 km, as I did say. And you can see all the impacts. Maybe Raleigh, North Carolina, into very coastal parts near Kitty Hawk. Let's say even Myrtle Beach, where South Carolina is, we're seeing some pretty big impacts. Morehead City, areas like that, Wilmington. And you can see how this does move around the North Carolina coast for almost a whole Thursday night and here Friday. And you can see how it does move off the coast, but it does clip parts of the northeast once it makes its way to Canada. So we can definitely expect some rains across the northeast, parts of Maine, Massachusetts. I know I said in my fall forecast we shouldn't see any tropical systems around Maine, but we actually are seeing a possible something that was tropical, or it could still be tropical once it gets there. We will be seeing some winds and rain with this, so it's not going to be as bad as the southeast, but we still are going to be seeing, we could still see quite a few impacts. Now, if we were to look at your total accumulated precipitation, you can see how the precipitation is pretty big, and you can see how this is kind of where the National Hurricane Center had its worst of the flooding, where this does have its worst of the rains. Now you can see the South Carolina coast is probably where this has its worst spot of the rains, which is kind of what we're thinking. Also into Wilmington, North Carolina, we see some bad impacts. You can see across coastal North Carolina, we do see some pretty big impacts with rain. And then once we get up into the Maine coast, we do see some. Also into Massachusetts, we will be seeing some rain impacts. Also, and that'll move into Nova Scotia throughout the days. Now, if we were to look over here at Fernand real quick, this is where it did make landfall. You can see it almost has equivalent rainfall to parts of Dorian. So it has some pretty bad rainfalls, especially along those mountains. So there is some mountains right here that are sucking up all that moisture. And you can see west of that, we don't really have as much moisture. We still do have quite a bit, but not as much. So I just do want to cover that a little bit. And you can see southern Texas, we could pick up a pretty good soaker. We shouldn't be concerned about too much flooding, but we could definitely see some impacts when it comes to rain. Okay, so if we were to look at your windy.com, we're just going to go through this really quick. And you can see how this rain and the impacts, if we were to go to right now and look at the weather radar, you can see how we do have rain across Myrtle Beach, Wilmington, near Charleston, Savannah, Brunswick, Jacksonville, near the Palm Coast, kind of that area. And you can see how it has been moving dangerously close to the southeast coast over the past 12 hours. So you can see how it is moving that northwestern way, and we are expecting it. Once we get this cold front, there is a cold front that'll be located somewhere around here, and you can see, you'll see later on in this when I get to windy.com, when I look at the future, you can see how right now it's moving northwest, and it doesn't look like it's really going to change. But when that cold front gets close enough, it should be able to push it off and turn it northeast before it makes any landfall. And just doesn't, and it brings huge impacts. So right now, that's kind of what's keeping us from making a direct landfall, or what's kind of making us doubt if we're going to see one. But if we were to go ahead and move into your future, you can see by tonight, we are seeing some really bad impacts across coastal Georgia when it comes to rain, and also winds. You can see winds are pretty intense too. Let's say right here you can see around 70 to 90 mile an hour wind gusts, and sustained winds are going to be somewhere around your 30 to 50. So that's definitely tropical storm force. That's why we do have a tropical storm warning. And you can see throughout your day on Thursday, it does move up. In Savannah, Georgia, you're still in this on your Thursday. And you can see how it does move into the South Carolina coast near Hilton Head, Charleston, Myrtle Beach. And you can see how dangerously close that center gets to making landfall. And we are going to have to watch this. Now, you can see Georgetown and Myrtle Beach. These are two areas that are in Charleston. I'm really concerned about these areas because you will be seeing this eye wall. If it does make this track, you will be seeing this eye wall. You can see it's right here. So that is our worst concern. With how close this is getting, Myrtle Beach and Charleston, Georgetown could be our worst impacted areas. Also, Wilmington. We could be seeing most of our impacts here because we will see that eye wall. So if we were to keep moving, you can see how the eye wall really just does hit you really hard. So if we were to look at your wind gusts with this, they will probably be pretty bad. And you can see how you're not getting the worst eye wall. Do remember the eastern side of the storm is worse. But you are seeing anywhere around 80-mile-per-hour wind gusts, and I do think we will see higher than that. If you do remember, we could definitely see 100-mile-per-hour wind gusts in some of these areas, and it's a lot of flooding. So if we were to keep moving near Greenville, Havelock, Avon, whatever you want to say, Kitty Hawk, we are seeing those rains and everything, even Wilmington on your Friday, and you also saw them on your Thursday night moving in the winds, and you can see how they move out you see the impacts on your Friday, and it should move out by your Friday night, maybe early Friday night, but right now it's looking like it will be the late Friday night. You can see by late Friday night it does start to move out, or maybe even around your evening. Now you can see how this does also clip the Massachusetts coast, Maine coast. You can see how it does clip it, but it does mainly hit Nova Scotia, New Brunswick. But you can see how it's a little bit of a different track than yesterday. So it's a little bit more west, as we were saying earlier on in the video. So if you live, I'm going to go ahead and highlight some areas across the East Coast that I'm concerned about. So if you live anywhere across here, let's say I'm going to do this. So if you live anywhere across here, you should be worried about some impacts from the storm. If it's rain or winds or both, that's kind of what we're worrying about. So if you live anywhere east of this line, that's where we'll see the worst of our impacts. Now, some of these will be a little bit more inland if we were to do something like this. So kind of just like that is where we will be seeing the worst of our impacts. You can see I did put coastal Massachusetts and coastal Maine in this because I am expecting us to see definitely some impacts from this, especially with that rain. Now, if we were to look over the next 5 days, I don't want to go over the next 10 days because we could get some false rainfall. You can see how the rainfall is still looking pretty intense. This is still picking up maybe 4 to 6 inches of rain across northern Florida and the very coastal areas. Jacksonville, 4 inches. Daytona Beach, 4 inches. Palm Bay, 1 to 2 inches. And you can see how the worst of that rain is going to be right offshore. So if this was to make a western shift, just a tiny little western shift, this could be really different. We could see a really bad rain impacts, or maybe, we already are seeing them, so we could get a little worse with those rain impacts. But you can see in parts of coastal South Carolina, there was just 15 inches of rain, as you did see in your Beaufort area, into your Hilton Head area. Savannah, Georgia, we are seeing some. Charleston, about a foot of rain. Walterboro, about 6 inches. Georgetown, about 7 inches. Myrtle Beach, about 5 inches. Myrtle Beach, we're going to have to see. I think in this area we could see some of our worst rainfall. I feel like this is downgrading it a little bit, but we will have to see. Columbia, about 1 inch. So you can see how inland this does get in South Carolina and North Carolina. It does get a little bit inland with the rainfall. Now you can see Greensboro, you have about, let's say, 2/10 of an inch, so nothing too bad there. Raleigh, about 1 inch of rain. Fayetteville, about 2 inches. Could spark some flash flooding possibly. You can see Florence, about 3 inches. Wilmington, about 7 or 8. Havelock, 6 inches. Greenville, 6 inches. Roanoke Rapids, 2 inches. Kitty Hawk, 7 inches. Avon, I still don't know how to pronounce that, 3 inches. Pretty much generally across the North Carolina coast, we should see anywhere from 4 to 8 inches, or maybe even a little bit more. I'm expecting maybe 10 or 12 inches in some spots, or maybe even a little bit more than that. So 10 to 15 inches is possible, but right now our general area would be anywhere from 5 to 8. So that's kind of what we're seeing. Now, if we do move across the southern South Carolina coast, I do think we could see some really bad rains, anywhere from 8 to 15 inches, or maybe a little bit more. But really, the general area will be somewhere across there. And you can see across Myrtle Beach, once again, it kind of just weakens a little bit. It does show on this. I don't know about that. We'll have to see. But if you're anywhere across here, I'm expecting the worst of the rain impacts here, and a lot of rain impacts across just this general area. Now, if we do move up, we can't forget our people over here. You can also see Virginia Beach. You are in that 4 inches of rain, so flash flooding is very likely. Now, you can see along Maryland, we do have across this area, you can see we have about 1 or 2 inches. And if we were to keep moving, you can see even New Jersey, you get some, Connecticut, but especially Massachusetts, we pick up about 2 inches or maybe a little bit more near your Nantucket area, about 3 or 4 inches. Now, if we keep moving north around your Maine area, southern coastal Maine should be around an inch or less. But if we get into your north and eastern coastal Maine, anywhere across about 3 inches. In Nova Scotia, near New Brunswick and Nova Scotia, anywhere from 3 to 5 inches of rain is what we are expecting. So there's a lot of areas being affected by the storm. It's very dangerous, but the worst affected areas will be the Carolinas. So I do hope y'all enjoyed today's video. If you did, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. Please do stay safe in this storm. I really do want everyone to stay safe. That's why I've kept everyone updated quite a bit. The Atlantic is really dangerous right now. We do already have 3 named storms and something off the coast of Africa we are already watching that could affect the U.S. in like coming weeks. So we will have to see. But if you did enjoy today's video, consider subscribing and leaving a like down below. Stay safe if you're in the storm, and I'll see you guys in the next one. See ya.